The epidemic hit. Perfectly healthy looking, vital young people were dying of a disease that no one understood. There were amazing communities, congregations of people who cared for the sick. They were as Christ to one another as people died. They looked after their friends who took sick, feeding them when they would eat, changing them, washing them, acting as a go-between between the families who were concerned about their sons, their nephews and brothers, etc., but wouldn't lend a hand to help because, AIDS is icky. And after they passed, there were memorial services to plan with no time to grieve. Because when one person died, you were needed somewhere else to begin the process again. This was a dark and a scary time. The Reverend Michael Piazza, who's become one of my spiritual mentors, he served as a pastor to this small congregation. And for those of you who can, if you can remember the 80s and the early 90s, you remember how the fear of the AIDS epidemic led to just the hate and the evil that spewed out of some people. Churches would dare to claim in God's name that AIDS was a plague sent by God against homosexuals. And so you can imagine that if you were like Michael, a pastor, watching the people that you love, your congregation, die each week, and then having those people who claim to share the love of Christ condemn them, you might imagine how that might cut you to the bone. It might make you want to give up. And in the face of that, Michael would finish the worship service, look out at his congregation, he would wonder who was going to be there next week or who would be hospitalized. And he would end each service with these words. Maybe you know them. Our time of worship is ended, but our service begins now. Go in peace and live passionately and love faithfully and celebrate every moment of your life from now until its finale, because our God of resurrecting grace goes with you always. It was a good word, a benediction spoken in the face of darkness. It was a persistent promise of grace for the people who were gathered together. People, many of whom had families, parents, siblings, grandparents who had rejected them, turned away, and wouldn't even visit them as they died.
I give you a new commandment. Love each other, just as I have loved you. So you also must love each other. This is how everyone will know that you are my disciples, when you love each other.
Michael's congregation gathered. They became community. They became family. To love each other as Christians should. And so this morning, as we do every Sunday morning, we've gathered. Now, today is a little special that it's Gathering Sunday, but we come together. This morning, we are celebrating the opportunities that God has given us to work together as disciples. Our continuing mission to be the healing hands and feet of Christ in this world. And I'm excited for this day, not just because we have a bounce house. That doesn't detract from it. But today may be that day on your life that marks the day that you decided to try something new. That you decided to commit to loving someone. And maybe today leads you to be part of the next big ministry that we do in Malawi. Or maybe you commit, as some of us have even in the last few weeks, to saying, I want to be part of making sure that the homeless in this town are fed. Or many of the other great things that are on that list that you have today.
But if I don't have love, I'm nothing. If I give away everything that I have and hand over my body to feel good about, what have I done? But I don't have love. I receive no benefit whatsoever.
Friends, there are lots of organizations that do good work. Huge organizations, foundations that do great work. But you know what I think makes a little community like ours amazing and powerful? It's the same thing that made Michael's community amazing and powerful in its time and to this day. It's love. It's about the relationships that we form with one another. As we come together as community, as family. It's about the love that we pour into everything that we do.
Like members of your family, be the best at showing honor to each other.
When we come together in love, a willingness to work with and sacrifice for one another, we become God's good word, God's benediction to the world. Michael's congregation, that little congregation, found ways to love like that. In a time when Christianity was becoming known for who they were against, there were some Christian communities that became known for who they loved. Never underestimate the power of love. At the end of the day in your life, it's all that's going to matter. Money runs out. The future is uncertain, but the love that you have in your life, it will never die. It was the power of love. Love that accepts all people as family. Love proved in the acts of compassion and justice during the AIDS epidemic and beyond, which eventually included 4,000 people in that Dallas congregation to become the Cathedral of Hope, one of the largest United Church of Christ congregations in the nation today. Now, in a few minutes, we are going to go downstairs and we're going to celebrate. We got the bounce house, we got a lunch, it's going to be great. But this is an opportunity just as much as it is a party. It's an opportunity to connect with people in love, maybe people you've never even met before. To see everyone who is gathered here today as part of your family, your journey. It's those connections, those relationships that are in this room that's going to shape your life. It's also from the relationships that you form, rooted in love, that our mission to be a healing force in the world, that's where it's going to come from. That's how we're going to continue to be God's good word, God's benediction to the world. In so many ways, today opportunity knocks. Amen.